Anyway, what I wanted to do was I wanted to spend some time actually going through the looking at the planning your time, just to give you an idea about what to expect. And so if you go to your planning your time slides, which you'll find on our website, you'll see that we November 6th. So that puts us here. So next week we're going to have our first, or not first, our second exam, exam two. Now, this is going to be another take-home exam, which is going to look exactly like the same kind of exam that we had earlier, where you were given the lab, or you had the lab time and you had the class before. I think I'll give it out in the class before. Maybe let's see, our lab's going to be on Wednesday. So if I give out the, uh, what I can do is I can give out the exam on Wednesday and then collect it on maybe by the first class, maybe by Friday. Would that be? Hopefully that'll be all right with everybody. So we'll have given during lab, and then you'll have like maybe 24 hours to get the whole thing done. Actually, maybe you'll have it. Yeah, I'll have it due like I think on Thursday evening. That'd be better. And if someone is in another time zone and they need more time to work on the exam, then let me know. Otherwise, I'm thinking that's what it is. But you'll have the final details of everything on Monday, where I'll give you some kind of pointers about what to expect and some ideas about how you should prepare for this. But actually, the lab, or sorry, the test itself is going to be obviously it's open note, open book because you're taking this at home. And so it's going to be very similar to the one that we had before, where you'll probably have to work on some kind of project and then answer some questions and then so on and so forth. Anyway, we'll clear up all that on Monday. I'll give you some idea about what to expect, and I think that we should be in good shape as we go into our lab time to take the exam on Wednesday. Are there any questions over the exam so far? And more details are coming, so I don't expect. But if you're interested in getting ready now, what I'd recommend though is look at all the material, the slides, for instance, the main concepts from the slides that we covered since the last exam, and that would be how you could start preparing. And by the way, please do pull over your ClassDocs repository. I've made some changes to the slides that we're looking at, and that is that I mean, these slides have been changed slightly, but the other slides that we worked with before have also been changed. And I'll tell you what those changes are. Today, what we're doing is we're going to be working with something called Pymongo, which is actually quite exciting. And Pymongo is, remember the time when we were working with SQL? That time, and we had a piece of Python code which we used to interact with a SQL database. We're going to do exactly that today with Python code and Mongo. And I've been saying all along that Python is, well, not Python, but programming languages are usually how you interact with some of these larger databases. And so we'll be talking about that today. But before we get any further, I wanted to say something here. That is that if you go to the slides on the November 2nd slides, so these are the old ones, if you pull them over again, I've made this change here, which is in red. And that is that if you are a Windows user, then this affects you, but otherwise it won't affect anybody else. I found another way of making things kind of easier to actually run Pymongo code on Windows machines. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a directory on your local hard drive called Mongo Data, /Mongo Data, and that is where we're going to start storing our Mongo data. That means that we're going to be able to, and that's how you can back up your database just by backing up this directory. We've been doing this in our Linux and Mac already. That's what this is over here. But in Windows, that wasn't the preferred way of doing it. In fact, Windows, with most of the documentation about how to install Mongo on a client-side Mongo database on Windows, they recommend that you use a volume. Well, volumes are fine, but for this course, it's not going to be very helpful because Mongo volumes are basically just areas inside a container someplace where you can't really see the files, but they're stored in there someplace, and that's where your database is actually being created and managed at the file level. But now what we're going to do is we're going to change this, and so we don't have to worry about this right now, but we will do this toward the middle of the class here. We're going to go back and change this so that all of your files for your Mongo database are going to be stored in a directory, so that, for instance, when you want to back up your Mongo database, all you need to do is just back up this directory here, and then you have your database. Anyway, so this is kind of a hack, but it works. I did try this out. It does work, but we're going to just have to in order to make this thing happen, though, we have to go back and undo the or actually recreate the container that we worked with earlier, and that's if you're working with Windows. Is there a question out there? I can hear someone's microphone. Anyhow, if you do have any questions, let me know. But we will work through this piece by piece. But let me just go back and or go to the end of these slides here and just make just talk about the final thing that we were going to talk about then, and then we'll go through the new stuff for today. So what I wanted to talk about was, by the way, one thing I was working on, which I wasn't able to do because I was a little tired. I won't tell you the details here, but I was up late the night before. And so I was making some mistakes as I was typing my code, but this is the code that I was actually working on when class adjourned on Wednesday. And that is that we're using these codes right here, the GT or the greater than or the LT, which is less than. We're using those conditional statements in Mongo queries to give us all the information which concerns restaurants for which the average cost was between 20 and 100. So if you come with me to the terminal, if I can find my terminal, of course it's not here, but let me just get my terminal ready and I'll show you what those commands look like when you type them in. And hopefully, can you see, actually you can't see this just yet. There we are, there we are. There's my terminal. Welcome back. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just type in these commands that I have here. Find my terminal, there we are, here. I'm inside already my container, so I think we all know how to do that. In fact, if you need to get into your container to run Mongo, please go back to the slides. You'll have all the information right there. I'm thinking that you'll probably have to type in this command here, which is going to get you into the container, which hopefully you still have running. We're going to close that container today. We're going to stop it and then remove it and then recreate it a bit here, but just follow through this one. It'll be okay. So if I go back over here, we're going to just type in Mongo at this. I know that I'm in my container here. If I see my root, I can go ahead and type in Mongo, and I'm inside. Now, don't forget that we have these very useful commands here. Actually, before I type in use, I'll say show db, or is it dbs? There we are. My db, there we are. So I type in show databases, and this is the database which I have created for last class on this system here. So I type in use my db. By the way, when you type in this command, you're going to see different databases there. This is just me getting ready for today's lesson, so sorry about that. Do that in a second. Now, if I say use my db, that means get inside this database and start look at and start looking for the collections. And so we can type in show me the collections. Is it the collections? With an S. Now, we were working with all of these databases here. These are all different databases which are actually sitting here just waiting for you to run queries over. So the command that I typed in from, where was it, my slides, here, not here. Sorry, I don't mean to make it one. I'm spinning around here. But we're going to look for all the average cost information where in this restaurants database where the average cost is greater than 20 but less than 100. So what does that look like? If I go back to my, and I can't, hard to find my terminal. If I go ahead and paste this in there, you'll see that. Well, hang on. Before I do that, let me show you the rest of the stuff here. The rest of the stuff in my database. Oops. Yes. There you are. If I type in this command here, find, then I can see everything inside my database. Everything is there. But I don't want to see everything. I only want to see where this average cost here is between 20 and 100. And so that's what this command is up here, where, for instance, it's looking at everything between all these average costs here. So this is like, it shows me the, it doesn't show me 100 here, but it shows me the 98, the 80 should be there. Yep, there we are. There's 80. And 1 is the restaurant in a cave where the bear is working. But one thing I will say, though, is that when you type in this command here, less than 100, The reason why we don't actually see 100 showing up here, there is an average cost of 100. The reason why we don't see that is because it's not inclusive. It's saying less than 100. We're not actually going into 100. If you wanted to have 100 here, you could probably make it a bit bigger if you wanted to, and you could get that in there. So anyway, there's a bunch of other things that are, there's other ways of doing that. If you wanted to actually include 100, then you could type in, for instance, less than or equal, right here, LTP. That should do the same job. Anyway, that's really that. I'm going to move on to the next thing. I don't want to leave anyone behind here. So if you have any questions, please let me know. But otherwise, I'd recommend just spending some time to play with these commands and see how they can be used. I think you'll find that while they may look kind of unusual when you first see them, I think that after a while, when you start using them, they begin to kind of make some sense. Okay, so there's that. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about from last class that we didn't cover was supposing, for instance, I wanted to parse my text. In other words, if I go back here, supposing I wanted to look supposing I'm looking for a cafe inside my text, but I don't know what the actual cafe was called. I just know that the word cafe appeared some way inside the in some form inside this body of text here, inside the name field. So what I'm going to show you now is how can I use a kind of a parsing mechanism so that I can actually pull out pieces of text. Now you're probably thinking, what a random thing to start talking about now. But actually, I think that you'll find that when you're working with Mongo, this will be one of the main things that you'll be doing, is looking at text and trying to figure out how you can actually pull out specific types of text, or how you can parse the text in certain fields. Now, we're going to use this command here called create index. Now, what create index will do is that, remember that when you go back to your data, show you again back here, right here, oops, I don't want to go. Okay, so these are all the fields here. And so when we go back to this thing here, we need to say this name field, and this name field. In fact, all the name fields across all of my documents. I want to be able to parse them. Otherwise, I can't do anything right now. I can't parse them yet. And so that means you're just saying to Mongo, I give you permission now to be able to go through these words and to pull out specific words that I specify. And so that's where this command here comes from, create index. And so what Mongo is going to do now is it's going to go through all the name documents and it's going to pull out all the words and create a smaller database that you won't see, but it's still there that Mongo will use to assist you when you're doing your queries. So if I go ahead and copy this over here, and I copy that field, or that command, go down here, I paste that in there. I'm going to create, I've already created an index, I think, here. So maybe that doesn't work here, but I think I've already created my index. But it should give you it should say something about your index has been created. And so if this, the next thing I'm going to do now is, hopefully this command will run, but I'm going to go through all those names that I've pulled out, and I'm going to be looking for actual specifics about the cafe. Oops. I guess maybe it didn't create my index. What's going on? Caused by. Well, it should be. Why this isn't working here. Doesn't work. I have to go back and look at it. Whether maybe this is my index. Why that's not working? It worked. I assure you, it worked last night, but I think that maybe I've changed something in my code here. Well, I may have to look into this and see what's going on. But this should be the code. I think I've done something to my container so that it doesn't work now. Or maybe it's no, it is. My container is actually write only right now. You can't save anything to it. That's not your. That's not. That probably will be your. I don't think that'll be your thing. But I think that the containers, my containers, I don't think it's going to work because it's write only. Anyway, but these are the commands you would use though, and when you run these things here, it should be able to kind of sift through all these words and give you all the records for which the text cafe comes up. I think I have to restart redo my container, otherwise it's not going to work. Anyway, but it does work if you have a fresh container. At least it did last night, so hopefully that's good enough. In fact, because our container is already working right here, sorry, you guys there. But because the container is already running, we have to run the container. So for instance, here we have this, we have to make this directory here, make directory. And then we have to run this new command here, where after we have made this directory in the C:\\, we have to tell Mongo that this is in Windows, by the way. This is just in Windows. We've already done this on Linux and Mac. But we have to tell Linux, or sorry, we have to tell Windows where it's able to store its files. And so this stuff right here in the red, this is brand new material. And I've updated all the other slide decks when we were working with Mongo, so that from the very beginning, you're just storing your files here. It works. So now let's just go ahead and try this. So follow me if you will. You can see that another slide that I've created that maybe this, couldn't think of actually where to put this slide. But I have this slide here called Killing a Docker Container. Now, as violent as that sounds, I assure you that it's not that violent. What this thing does is this thing stops a container. In order to make any major changes to a container, you have to, like if you want to remove it, if you want to like install new stuff, chances are you have to stop that container, and then you have to either you can let Mongo remove it for you and update it, or you can actually manually remove it yourself. Today we're going to be stopping this container that we have running from before, and then we're going to be manually removing that container and then rebuilding it. And then in that container, we're going to be able to work with our Pymongo Python script. So there's a lot of steps going on here, so please stay with me, and we will be good to go. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of my container. Hope you can all see me. Yeah. And I'm inside here. I'm going to go ahead and type in exit. So now I am back. I'm outside of my container. Notice that was inside the container. Now I am outside the container. Not there anymore. So I need to go ahead and find out. In fact, on my Mac machine here, I have to type in sudo, but I'm going to be typing in, I need to find out what my container was called. Actually, I'll just type image ls. If you type in this command here, docker image, I have a lot of things running, a lot of containers. Now, this is all, I'm not trying to show off here, but these are all containers that I have going here. Most of them are for my research. I actually put my research in containers so that I'm sure that when I ship my code, I know that all the drivers are going to run on other people's computers. But actually, what I'm looking at, though, is this right here. I know that my container is still running here. Never mind about when it was created. That's just, I don't know why that's so long ago. It was actually created just last night, but whatever. So anyway, I know that my container is there. So that's my Mongo container. The next command I want to type in on this machine is docker, and I can type in ps. And this actually tells me what containers are running. So the other command that I typed in was docker image ls, which shows me kind of what containers are sleeping on my machine that are not running, but they're there. So I don't have to, I could run them if I wanted to, but I don't have to reinstall them. I don't have to pull them over from the Docker hub. They're there. They're just not running. But I want to see what containers really are running, and that is this command here, docker ps. So this over here is the ID number for my Docker container, which is running Mongo. It's still running. It hasn't stopped. It says it's been running for 11 hours. That's about right. So what I want to do now is I want to stop my container. So if you go back to your slides, you'll see that, for instance, you have this code here, stop the container. Now remember, we called our container originally MongoDB. I'm going to use this command right here. If you're using Windows, go ahead and use the other command. The only difference is that in Linux and Mac, you have to type in this word sudo, which means the super user. Means that when you have this command in front of your other commands, you're able to do administrative stuff. But on Windows, I don't think you have to worry about that. So I type this in over here, stop MongoDB, and then after some time, click, 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 it'll just give you this word here. I think that means that now if I type in docker ps, it means that it's not running any longer. Now, the next command I want to type in is this docker ps minus q&a. Now, what is that over here? Well, remember when I typed in, when the container was running, I typed in this command ps, docker ps, and it was running, and it said, okay, you can't really see this very well, but I can but this is like a table of columns here. And so the column, the first column is the container ID. And so the ID that I'm going to go after is this ID here, this 4E9D86, et cetera, et cetera. Now, let's go back to the kill here. So when I typed in that command docker ps while it was still running, I saw that there. And so I know that that's the container that I was running. The container now, it's still there. It's just asleep. And so now what I want to do is I want to remove that container. And so I'm going to be using these commands down here to actually go after it. In fact, I think that this is still the same. Maybe it's still the same thing. The command, though, is to remove is just sudo docker rm. If you're using Windows, you just type in docker rm. Remember, you get that number from when you type in docker ps when the container is running. But if it isn't running, then you can just type in your if you just type in this this command here, docker ps -q -a, this will tell you all of the. If you type in this command here, docker ps -a, then you'll be able to see what the command is or what the container is. It's a big. I mean, this is a big table here, and so this over here is all one line. The other stuff here, Upbeat Clark and Jolly Hopper, these are other things that have been going on. There are other containers on my machine, but actually I'm going after this one. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to type in sudo docker rm followed by this number here, that alphanumeric thing, and my container should just disappear, and it should go away. And so if I type in this again, you'll see that now I have two containers running. So that is how you can actually stamp out, stop, and remove a container. Now, the reason why you would do this is because, remember, what I was talking about before is that we're going to go back and we're going to reestablish our container. And for the Windows users, we're going to actually store our Mongo files in a directory called Mongo data. And that means that we're not using a volume anymore that Docker puts together. Docker has put together this software system where you can store Mongo files in a volume, which really means that you allow Mongo to take care of your files for you, but you never actually see them. Here, we're returning the use of those files to Windows, and we're saying let Windows handle those files so that we can see them, and so that we can actually, we can work with those files as files. And so, if you're a Windows user, I believe that we've already done this for Mac and for Mac and Linux. But if you're a Windows user, please type in this command. Just go to your command prompt. Just type in this make directory. And what that's going to do is it's going, in fact, this won't work here because this is Linux and Mac. But if you type in this over here, it's going to create this directory in your root directory, Mongo data. It's easy as anything. It's like that's like the top of your directory structure in Windows. Make dir, that means make a directory. It won't work. If I want to do this in Linux, I'd have to type in make dir, and to get to the top of my directory here, I would type in this mongo data, and so I'd have that. This is how I'd run this in Linux, and you can see that Linux Mac. You can see that this command is already written down here, and we've already done that. Okay, now hopefully you're still with me, and you've typed in this command, and everything's okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and run this Mongo directory, or sorry, run this Mongo container. And what this is going to do is, this is a different command from what we typed in last time, where we are pairing the files in Mongo data with the files that we can see inside, or with a directory that we can see inside Mongo, the Mongo container, which is data.db. So if you type in this command here, exactly as you see it, after having created this directory, then it should work just fine, where it's going to say everything in this file here can actually be reached inside this directory here. Otherwise, it's basically all the same. So I'm going to go down to Mac and Linux, and I'm going to type in that. In fact, copy this. Work. In fact, I'll show you that I believe that I already have Mongo. Yeah, so I've already created this directory on my machine. In fact, if you're Linux and Mac, then you have all of it ready. So now, if I go ahead and just type in this, your Windows command is going to be different in that you don't have the sudo. But if I type that in here, then it's going to create a new container, brand squeaky new. Of course, you'll have the Mongo and everything's going to be installed in there, but it's a new container. And now you can work in there. So that works okay. So now I'm going to go back to my slides, and I'm going to go and type in this command here, logs MongoDB, and just see what's going on in there. Is my Mongo actually doing anything? You can see that typing this command here, it's really saying, okay, there's a container that's been created where MongoDB is working. What is the database doing now? And this is all database activity, really just listening for me to log in. Okay, so, and also, for instance, if you type in this command here, this docker ps, you can always try that again. Sudo docker ps, you'll find that, for instance, you can see now that I'm actually running a new container. Pretty cool. So we've created essentially, it's a virtual machine. That means that the software inside that container is running, thinking that it's on its own machine and that there is nothing else running it. There's nothing else going on inside that. So the next thing we have to do is obviously go back to your slides, and there's this run instance. I believe that on Windows, the run command is exactly the same. It's just that there's no sudo in front of everything. And I'm going to go and I'll just go and type that in and see what I get. So here I am. I type in this, paste is in there. I type in sudo, and I'm in root. And so this is a brand new squeaky clean container, which I think, whoops, I can do that. I'm typing Mongo. Before I can do that, I'm inside my container, and I just want to show you around a little bit and just to show you what we have in here. So inside your container, hopefully you're able to get inside here. If you're a Windows person and you had some trouble with this, you may have to try those commands again if it went wrong. But they do work. I have tried them on my Windows machine. If you follow through by, first of all, destroying or stopping your container, then you destroy it, you reestablish it after having created that directory, then it should be okay. So let me just take you back and show you something. That is that this command right here, well, remember that I have these, I'm in my Linux machine here, I've created this directory here as a place where I'm going to store my files. But in my container, I reach that directory by typing in this path. And so going back here, I can find that path. Yeah. I can find that path by typing cd space data, typing ls. You can see that there's a db directory in there. Type in db, and there we go. We have all this. We have these files here. And so that's really all these files. This is your database. And in fact, let me just get out of my database for just a moment here. I can see those same files in this directory here. So it's the same stuff. It's a copy. Let me get back into my container. Back in my container, and I'm going to go over here, back to the directory where everything's being stored, and I have all those files still. Now, hopefully you were able to get that, and then there's been no trouble. I think I can just go ahead and type in Mongo from here, and it worked just fine. There we go. So I'm inside my container. I've typed in Mongo, and you're probably wondering, why did we go through all that fuss? Like, why is this so necessary? Well, that takes me into the next part of this class here. I'm just going to, before I get out, let me just check something here. Show DBS. You see that everything's still there. Cool. So I'm going to get out of this for a second here and just go back to my root. I know that Mongo is not working. And let's return to our slides and see why all this excitement. What are we actually doing here? Well, this is all about, these are all these other slides you've seen before. We're going to use this new tool here called Pymongo. And Pymongo is actually very important because it is a Python interface between MongoDB and the user. So that means you can create code. The user can create code, which is now able to work with a database in Mongo, which is actually kind of magical. So the next thing I want you to do, and I know this sounds like a lot of extra work here, but it's coming to an end. I want you to create another directory inside your Mongo. If you're using Windows or using that Linux or Mac, I want you to create another directory where you store some files. This is a hack. The reason why I want you to be able to see this, these files here, is because we're going to be creating a directory inside here. And inside that directory, we're going to store our source code. And then in that source code, you can actually run that file inside your container. So let's get out of this container for a second. And if I'm going too quickly, I do apologize. I'm just interested in going through the steps here. We will have I'll put out a video for this class, and you can pick it up, or it's all the commands are going to be in the slides, and so you can go ahead and try that and try them again, and let me know if you have any questions. But what I'm going to do is, first of all, on this machine, I have to make a directory, and I think I've already made my directory. I have this Mongo data here, and then I create a directory here called source. I've already created the directory; it's right here. But if I did not have that directory already created, then I type in this command here, mongo data source, and then that should take me through a that should create this directory. And so if I just type this in here, it'll say that the file already exists. In fact, I'll show you what it looks like. If I just type in ls mongo here, this is your source directory. That's in fact.
Professor, it's your terminal.
Oh, sorry. Okay, there we go. Sorry, didn't mean that. I please let me know if that happens again. I guess I get too excited. Sorry. Okay, so here we are. So if you're typing inside here, ls, you have this directory here called source, and then you can see the source, and that's your directory where you're working. This is your directory. See that D there, and that's where you have your. And so now inside my source, why do I care about that source so much? That's where I'm going to put my file. That's where I'm going to put my file that's sitting in my sandbox in class docs. So let me go back to my, just show you what the class docs is going to look like here. This string, we want, class docs, lessons, and then if I go to 10, sandbox directory here, and inside sandbox, you'll have this file, which is right here. So this is your MongoDB. So what I want to do is I'm going to copy this file into my directory where I'm working with the other stuff, in my Mongo data directory. And so I would do that just by typing copy Mongo. Oops, oh, there's a space there all of a sudden. And then I'm going to put that into my Mongo data src. I've already copied the file in there, so I won't do it this time, but it should be there. So this is the file copied in there, and then you're done with that part. So in other words, when you type in ls mongo data src, you should find that this file has been copied inside there. Now I'm using all command line copying techniques, but you can always just use your mouse-driven systems if you want, like a GUI, and to do the same task, and that's fine. So going back here, these are really the commands that you're going to be typing in, just that stuff there. Just copying in this file into your directory. And that is it. Now, why do I do that? Well, let's go back to, what's the command I type in to actually run this thing? I don't have to keep remembering these things. I just like copy and paste it. But I'm going to go back and copy in my command to run my container. Come with me if you will. There we are. And I'm going to go and run it. Oops. Okay. And if I go inside, I'm inside my container now. Everyone can see me. If I go into the source, going on. Well, DB. If I go inside my DB, here I am in this directory. If I'm in this directory inside my container, then if I go inside src, I should be able to see my file. Thank goodness for that. It does seem to work. Okay, now you can go ahead and type in Python 3, but you'll find that it doesn't work. In fact, you need Python 3, not Python, but Python 3. This doesn't work. And so what we're going to do, and this may take some time, and in fact, we may not have time to actually run this file today, but when we come back on Monday, we'll run it certainly. And the reason why it's going to take time is because we have to install some stuff. It's like some libraries that's going to allow the file to run. And we also have to install Python. And so if you go back to these slides down here, we need to start up Pymongo in a Docker container. Now to do that, we have this. These are all commands you'd run inside your container. You're inside the container. You're not going to be outside, but you're inside your container. And your first command you type in is this apt-get update. And when I do this on this machine here, you're going to see a bunch of stuff start flying over your screen. What this is doing is this is looking at all the repositories of files which are available to install on your container. They're all Linux packages. Now, I'm going back to my slides here. What's the next command I have to type in? I have to actually install Python 3. Now, this could take a moment. So apt-get install Python 3 pip. Back here, just paste that in there. And then this is going to take some time to actually run through. And you'll see that depending on your internet connection, just push yes, by the way. Let's install it. 377 megabytes. But depending on your internet connection, it may take more time. Hopefully, if everyone's able to stream video, you probably have a pretty good connection, so it won't take you as long as. But I'm going to let that just go through and keep running. But really, what I'm doing now is I'm grabbing all the Python packages which are necessary to run Python code on my machine. I mean, I see things flashing over my screen now, which are the compilers. So, for instance, Python has a lot of C programming in it. And so when you install Python 3, it also has to compile parts of the programming there. And some of the source code is being compiled as you install it. And so not all of this stuff is Python stuff. Some of the stuff is actually stuff like software to compile Python. Okay, so let me just, while that's going through, maybe I will go back to the slides and see what the next command is. And you'll see that this should be running. If you had any trouble, then please do go back to the slides. Everything is there. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I have to install my library that's actually going to install Pymongo. Pymongo is a library that comes with Python, or that comes with Python, but they don't actually install it in Python until you say, I want it installed. And that means that this pip install is really saying, go out to the repository where you can find, where you can install the library. What I'm saying is it's available to Python, but it doesn't come shipped with Python, which is why we have to use this thing here called pip, which is going to install this. Now, I think if I just copy this, come back here, you can see that my installation has completed. Hopefully by about now, everyone else's installation has completed, and so it should be more or less wrapping up. But if it hasn't yet, just stick with it. It will wrap up soon. The next thing you want to type in is this thing here called pip3 install Pymongo. You press enter, and it should say collecting Pymongo. This is another install. So let's go back and recap and just kind of like review what the steps were we just typed in and what is all this stuff we just did. So we have this thing over here, this apt-get update. That's a Linux command that says, I'm going to start updating my software soon. Tell me what the latest versions of all the software available to me are so that I can install this. So apt-get goes out to a central repository for Linux, which is how your container runs, and it finds all the software and all the stuff that it can download. That is why, for instance, when you go back over here and you go to the very, very top, like all the stuff that you had to install, these were all files that had to be installed. You can see that they all come with a version. There's a number for all of these things here. And so in order for your system to be able to download the latest version, it has to know what latest versions, what they are. And that's what this thing does here. This also gets the names of all the software packages and any updates that the names may have, and so on and so forth. But also, though, this piece of software, Python 3 pip, is also going to be listed in this update somewhere. And so now that we have that, we use this apt-get, which is really to install an app, install some piece of software called Python 3 pip. That's going to be listed in here, and so that means that now that this now that apt-get knows that it's there, it can find the version and it can find the I guess the link to finding the files. So anyway, this will install that, and then once this is finished, then we have this command here, pip3, which comes with Python. This is actually Python that we're installing. But we also have this command here called pip3, which allows us to run other software that's Python-only software, like libraries. It's another package manager. This is a package manager. Use it to download these packages. And we can download that package there. But inside Python, it has its own package manager called pip. And pip downloads this, which is a library. So that's kind of crazy. So if everybody's installation has gone according to plan, it should be coming up. In fact, I'll show you what I have on my screen. It's everything finished with an OK. It says it's successfully installed. My version is 3.11.0. You should have the same version on your machines. It could be that. Actually, I don't know. It should be the same. It should be the same version. It should be the same. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is, remember, we are here in this directory, and so I'm in this Mongo demo. I'm going to let us take you through this for a second here, just to show you what to expect in this file. Oops, I don't have Vim in here. Oh, no, it's in here. apt-get install. Actually, do I have VI? Maybe I have VI. I'm looking for an editor. You don't have to do this on your end. I'll just do this so that you have, so I can show you. I'm just installing the Vim editor so I can show you this file. And it shouldn't take too long at all. And I've just installed another package, so it's coming through. In fact, this is the command I just typed in, apt-get install Vim, if you're interested. But if I type in Vim now, followed by the name of the file, then I have this editor. It's that easy to install things in your container and on Linux. But I wanted to take you through and show you really what we're doing. This is the inside of the file. I hope we can all see this. This is actually what the Mongo file is. And so we have our basic include or imports here, which are saying go out to the libraries and pull in this library here called Mongo client, which we'll get from this super library called the Mongo or Pymongo. But the actual commands that we're working with, I would wager, are very similar to how we work with SQL as a program in Python. So for instance, we have a read command here, which really just takes in this. There's a command that's built in here, like an employee. In fact, I've hard-coded everything here. But this emp call, this is just a variable, and what it does is it will go and run this command inside Mongo. Whatever happens inside this command, in fact, we know what this command is, employee.find. That gives you a complete listing of all the stuff in your database. So that complete listing of all the stuff in the database from this command here is now saved in here, and we can go ahead and parse through this and print out line by line what we've doing. In other words, this is almost exactly the same to what we did when we were working with SQL. And then over here, if anything goes wrong, then we have a print statement. This whole code will stop until our program doesn't crash. It just says there is an error, such and such time. So anyway, I don't expect any errors to happen here. Now, the next statement that we have is actually a little bit more interesting. We have another function which is actually asking for information. We're going to actually populate our database. It asks for instance, employee ID, and then it just says here's an input command which is asking the user to enter a string. So whatever the user types in for this, they're all saved as these variables here. And then when those variables have been saved, that means when strings have been saved to those variables, whatever the user types in, we're not parsing anything here, but whatever the user types in is then inserted as an insert one statement. And in fact, this is just code that works right out of the box for Mongo. The only thing is here that these are all variables which were picked up from these questions above. And again, we have this try statement here, which means that if anything goes wrong, then don't crash the program, but instead report back to the user saying something terrible happened. Tells you that's your exception. Here we have this is the last minute print statement that says that everything was working okay. Then we have a similar thing here, which is an update. I'm going to go ahead and just run to the bottom here to show you how everything happens. The update is very, very similar. In fact, here we use the set, which is we talked about in the last slide deck. But what we do though is at the bottom here, this is how we actually establish our connection to our database and then run it. Here we have a client where I have to say where I can actually connect to my database. And this is probably standard stuff. This is your port number, which is probably not going to change. Then over here, I have this database call right here, which really says, make the connection to my database. In other words, find the client, which is running in my Docker container or something. I'm running this file, by the way, in my Docker container. And then once you're in the Docker container, it will find Mongo running. And then you have all these commands here. So I can actually read, which then goes back up to this command, or sorry, this function up here. Gives me a listing of everything inside my database. And then I get to go do an insert, which then gives me this kind of question and answers area here where I can actually enter information and send it into my database. And then again, I have this other read command, which shows me what the updates are. So you have that code there. Let me just go ahead and run this just to give you an idea. Let me remove something first of all. If I type in Mongo here, I'm going to use, I'll show collections. Nothing is there. Show DBS. Oops. Okay. So I'm going to this is my Mongo demo. I think that's what I'm going to be actually sending my stuff. If I type in use Mongo demo, show collections employee. I'm going to remove this just so that you can see that it does actually create. Let's see this. So this is all gone. So I've removed the databases I was playing with last night. So if I use this show collections, nothing is there. Now let's get out of this and run the program. And if I type in Python 3 followed by this Mongo demo, hit run here, enter the employee ID 007. I'll just type in first name is James, last name is Bond, and his age, I'm going to put him at a 25. I don't know. Where's he from? He's from the UK, and I'm done. And so here, this is the data. This is this is running my Python code. This is saying before there was nothing in the database. Then after I made my insertion, this is the new stuff that was. So let me just, one more thing before we actually adjourn today. Let me just show you if I go to Mongo and I type in use, we call it again, Mongo data, use Mongo demo, rather. And then if I type in show collections, it's in there, employee, I can type in db employee.find, and you can see that this is the stuff I just entered. So now you have perfectly working code. We're kind of getting to the end of class now. I don't mean to keep you all for long, but we have perfectly good code that will keep you that you can use to actually interact with your database. Now here, the code that comes out of this, or the data that comes out of our program, is ugly. It's not very easy to read, but now you have it as, I think, a dictionary object, and so you can use this. You can, in fact, I think this is a dictionary. But you have this code that you can use, and you can parse it, and then you can take the information out and send it into whatever. Anyway, I didn't mean to keep everyone so long here. Go ahead and type an exit out of both of these things, and you're done with that. And then you're out of your container, and you're back to your computer again.